All right, we're going to be looking at the different types of Bolexes that we have here at the University of Tampa. And we have prime and zoom lenses. We're going to be starting with the Bolex prime lenses. You can see there's a turret that has a rotating, you can choose between several lenses, versus a zoom, which you would actually, it just has one lens that you zoom in. So these are all three prime cameras that we have. This camera is the original H16 reflex camera, which is called the Rex, the Bolex Rex H16 reflex camera. It's the original Bolex camera. And the way it's distinguished is its base is round, and it has a little place here where you can add a pistol grip. And also this focusing element for the reflex viewer has a little knob. It also has a circular top. There's no saddle for receiving a magazine to take a 400-foot load. So this camera is limited to 100-foot loads. We're only shooting 100-foot loads in this class anyway. This camera is actually a Rex 4 camera because it has a flat base. The Rex 3 had some improvements in the viewfinder, but it still had the little pistol grip support there. This one again has the rounded top, but a flat base, and this is the Rex 4. And then this is the Rex 5, so this is the most recent camera that we have in the prime lenses. It receives a magazine on the top, which we're not going to be using, but it distinguishes the camera. It has an angled top, flat bottom, and you can see here that this is a diopter adjustment that we're going to go in on some close-ups with. Okay, so what we have is the original 1956 model, a later model, the Rex 4, and then we have the Rex 5 camera. All right, next we're going to be taking a look at our zoom cameras, and we have two different models. We have, again, this is the Rex 4 model. You can see it has the rounded top, flat base. It has a very nice viewfinder diopter adjustment and nice little eyepiece there. This is a 12 to 120 ingenue zoom lens, which actually is quite nice. This makes this camera special. And then what we have here is a Rex 4 model. It has a broken strap, but that doesn't mean that the camera won't function. It's actually going to take some pretty good pictures. And it has a wonderful Switar lens. This is a Kern-Palliard lens that's made for the Bolex camera. And it used to have the ability to have automatic light metering here, but we're going to be using manual light meterings, and we will not be using the meter that's on the camera. Okay. This is a little bit more complicated because to change the f-stops you have to turn this little ring here, which is different from all the other cameras. But likewise, it has reflex viewing here, a very nice diopter eyepiece, and various components of the camera body that we're going to be taking a look at and discussing in detail. Okay? This has one zoom lens. It's the Palliard. Let's see what this goes from what to what. This is an 18 to 86 millimeter zoom lens, the Palliard Switar, Vario Switar, so it's a Swiss-made Kern-Palliard lens. Okay, so what we have here is the, it is a, you can probably see, 18 to 86 millimeter zoom lens. It is Swiss made. It's Kern-Palliard, and it's a Vario Switar lens. And there it says 18 to 86 millimeter for the H16 Rex camera. So this was made for the Bolex camera. There are several rings. This is the focusing ring here. What distinguishes a focusing ring is you can find the infinity, and it says feet or millimeters, and then you know you're actually focusing the camera. As opposed to zooming in, which you can see here, the camera is going from 18 to 86, and that is going to be your zoom component. Sometimes there's a stick that comes out of here so that you can handle and turn. And likewise, we have f-stops here, which is an unusual place for them. These are the f-stops on this camera, and it goes from 2.5 to 16, to f16. So it goes from f2.5 to f16. And this is a disconnected automatic light meter. We're going to be using manual light meters. Okay, now this is the other style lens. This is the ingenue, the 12 to 120 ingenue lens that comes with the Bolex Rex 4. And what you can see here is what the lens type, oh, it's actually 12, let's see, what is it, 10 by 12. It is, okay, you can see here it says f12 to 120 millimeters. That's defining the amount of zoom that you can go in, which is about a 10 by zoom. You can see it's an ingenue lens. That's a French lens. Serial number. Ingenue zoom. Okay, and here what we have, let's take a look. We have this element for zooming the lens, which you actually pull out to engage, and then you can turn it, and it allows you to make a nice smooth zoom. So you can see that it's turning the zoom ring, which is the second ring, and you can see that it's going from 12 to 120 millimeters. Okay. Again, the first part of the lens is the focusing element. That which is the closest to the front of the lens is where you're going to be focusing. And you can see the infinity marks and feet and M for meters. So that's how you can tell that this is the focusing element of the lens. And of course it's going to be to the mark for meters, which is in white. And that's also going to correspond with the feet. We want to talk a little bit about the difference between T-stops and F-stops. This lens is relatively fast for a zoom lens. It goes from f2.2 all the way down to 22, f22, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then on the top, you see the red f-stops. All right, so here we're going to be looking at the ingenue lens. And you can see that this lens goes from 12 to 120. So that's the zoom capacity of the lens, 12 to 120 millimeters. And it is a P ingenue lens, which is a French type of lens. It's a French-made lens. And so on the first ring, the ring that I'm turning is to focus the camera. You're going to be focusing here, and you can see that that's signified because it has the infinity sign and feet and meters. On the back of the camera, you can actually see the line that lines up to feet if you were to pull tape, which is not necessary through a reflex viewing system generally, unless you're trying to figure out depth of field parameters for choreographing a shot. Now, the second thing to notice about this camera is that it has a special little zoom. Notice it's not doing anything, it's just spinning freely. Nothing's happening until I pull this out. And when I do it, it engages the little teeth so that you can actually zoom in quite smoothly between your 12 to 120 zoom capacity of this lens. Okay, you can also do it manually and just turn it, but that might not be as smooth or as slow. The next one is f-stops that we see here, and we're going to get a close-up of this. These are actually red, so these signify t-stops, and t-stops are more accurate than the white f-stops, which have the exact same numbers. But the difference between f-stops and t-stops are that the t-stops take into consideration the glass elements in the lens, and then will stop down give you a more accurate f-stop according to your light reading, based on the glass elements in the lens. There are multiple glass elements in this lens because it's a zoom lens for one thing. But even a prime lens would have t-stops always signified with red numbers, and they're more accurate than the white. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Notice that on this camera, the zoom lens is mounted into the turret, and then there's a securing bolt here that's holding this turret in place, and then there's also another piece here that's there to close where there would have been a lens. You don't need to remove those. So now that we've been talking about t-stops and f-stops and zoom elements, or millimeter of the lens, we can see how that corresponds to a prime lens. Okay, this is a prime lens, and we'll find out a little bit more about this lens. Looking on the lens itself, you can see that it's a 75 millimeter lens. That's actually a telephoto lens. When you have a prime lens on the turret, it's this lens that's receiving light, and so it's this lens that you would set your f-stop and focus. The turret turns so that you can select the lens of your choice and seat it into the path of the light that's coming in to strike your film. And you can tell which lens is going to be active by seeing this filter slide here, and that's going to show you that it's the one that's the closest to the filter slide that will be the lens that you're going to be focusing, and it's the lens that you're looking through. So if you wanted to shoot a wide-angle shot, you would turn your turret to place the wide-angle lens in its seat there. And so you can see that this is the wide-angle lens. This is an f16 millimeter lens that you can see inside that it says f16 millimeters. And f16 millimeter will give you something that resembles the view of a human eye. Then you have 25 millimeter lens, which is sometimes called a 1-inch lens. This lens here, we're going to put that one, seat that one in place. You can hear it click when it's seated. And let's back this up just a little bit here. Okay. The 25 millimeter lens here is what's called a normal lens for 16 millimeter. So everything that has a higher millimeter number is telephoto, like 75 millimeter is a telephoto lens, whereas a 16 millimeter is a wide-angle lens, because wide-angle is more wide when compared to the 25 millimeter normal lens for 16 millimeter. That changes for 35 millimeter because of the size of the film. Okay, and likewise with digital cameras, the size of the sensor sometimes determines what would be considered a normal lens on that camera. And we can check some charts and specs to see what the appropriate lenses are for different types of camera sensors. This. On the front of this lens, the first thing that we have are the f-stops. And we have white f-stops, and that lens doesn't have any t-stops. It has f-stops only. This one also has f-stops right on the front. So these are f-stops. I'm turning the f-stop to line up with the line. And that's like the iris of your eye, where 2.8 would be the widest open, and f22 would be the most stop down or the smallest hole opening. We might be able to see with this lens here, when I stop it down, it's probably hard to see here. When I stop this down, inside, okay, it's pretty far in there. Let's see if I can get a view of it. Well, it's hard to see, and we'll look at it with a macro lens. Maybe from this angle we can see here. I think it's just too bright. Okay, inside it's stopping down and opening up. That's open and stop down. Okay. All right, so that's a little bit about the prime. These are called, as opposed to a zoom lens, these are called prime lenses. And this turret has 3 different lenses assembled on it that you can switch to according to the type of shot that you want. So why would you prefer to have to go through all that hassle of changing the turret, changing the position of the lens every time you wanted to change, rather than just zooming in? Well, partly because sometimes these are considered faster lenses. They can go to a wider open f-stop. And sometimes they're considered to be sharper if you use a prime lens. So those would be the 2 reasons why you might prefer to use a prime over a zoom lens.